Need to hit the button.
Yep. Volume up on that?
Yeah.
Awake thou that sleepest. Arise from the dead.
Read the Bible, you'll find out that God's not too happy with what's going on around us.
Redeem the time, because the days are evil.
The Bible has not changed!
Boldly proclaim the restoration and preservation of Christian values in America.
Satan has brainwashed a whole nation.
As goes the church, so goes the nation.
Nobody's convicted of anything anymore.
And now, here's Last Call with your host, B.J. Edwards.
Feels like I've been holding my breath, trying to steal my restless heart. Everything
Ho, 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 Merry Christmas. Got Santa in the studio with us this morning, if you can see him. Move my mic out of the road there. Oh, he doesn't have his hat on. Oh well. We can't take his picture this morning. And to our progressive socialist listeners, please accept with no obligation, implied or implicit, my best wishes for an environmentally conscious, socially responsible, low-stress, non-addictive, gender-neutral celebration of the winter solstice holiday practiced within the most enjoyable traditions of a religious persuasion of your choice, of secular practices of your choice with respect for religious secular persuasion and or traditions of others, or the choices not to practice religiously or secular traditions at all. I also wish you a physically successful, personally fulfilling, and medically uncomplicated recognition of the onset of the generally accepted calendar year 2018, but not without the due respect for the calendars of choice of other cultures whose contributions to society have helped make America great. Not to imply that America is necessarily greater than any other country, nor the only America in the Western Hemisphere. Also, the wishes made with regard to race, creed, color, age, physical ability, religious faith, and sexual preference of wishes. To my Christian conservative friends, Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
What a wicked web we weave.
Oh, yeah. Happy Hanukkah.
Yeah. Hey, we've got a great show for you this morning. Very, very topical. We're going to have a couple guests on today, and it's just incredible where we are with our nation. And I'm not just going to talk about Christmas, but there are some things that are affecting Christmas that we don't talk about that we probably need to.
We're all affected by it.
Yep. Could your child's Christmas be stolen by the judicial Grinch? Horror stories created by Child Protective Services, CPS. Our special guests, Connie Reguli and Ashley Ellithorpe, join us today from Tennessee. Plus, is baby Jesus in swaddling clothes? Is that what we're to think? Or does he have a whip in his hand at the changing tables? Or should it be both? And it looks like we got our huge Christmas present in terms of an income tax break. Did you notice that, Mr. Anderson?
I heard about it. I haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, well, it's going to be a year or so before you see that.
I thought they said in February.
Yeah.
Should see it in our paycheck in February.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you'll see it in your paychecks in February. But boy, if you watch and listen to the U.S. version of Pravda, you think that we are all going to be seriously injured because our government will have less money to motivate us with and possibly reduce the slave population in the USA. Heaven forbid. You know, perception is reality, Mr. Anderson.
That's true.
Yeah. We've got a clip here I want you to play for us.
But reality isn't perception.
Yeah, yeah. If you play that clip for us, I want you all to listen carefully to this clip. And this has to do with the tax cut. But again, perception is reality.
And Joseph went up from Galilee to...
That's not the one.
That's not the one, Mr. Anderson. We've got a man on the street that's talking to a group of Democratic voters. He starts off by talking about the Republican tax cut and then turns the tables on his
I'm Ami
listeners.
Horowitz, and I'm back in the East Village,
Ami Horowitz.
liberal Mecca. The Republicans recently voted on a new tax proposal, and predictably, Democrats didn't like it. But what if they thought that the Republican plan was actually a Bernie Sanders proposal? We presented them with the Republican tax plan and pretended that it was in fact Bernie's plan.
When he first
What are
presents,
your
he's not
thoughts?
telling them it's
Republican tax
Bernie's.
plan, good, bad?
I'm going to be honest with you, I feel like there's just another excuse for the rich people to get a break on having to pay taxes that the rest of us hardworking people have
And
to
they
pay.
think this is the
Doesn't
Republican
have
tax
much
plan.
stuff in it for the middle class working Americans, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
That's
the
what,
basis
that's
of
what you've
what
heard.
I've heard,
Right.
yeah.
It seems like the middle class is going to get hit pretty hard here.
They suck. They all suck.
I mean, there's a lot about the current proposed tax plan that's just ridiculous.
So Bernie came out with a competing plan. I want to give you some of the deal points and kind of get a sense of what you think of his deal points.
Okay.
So if you're making $50,000 or less, most family of four will not pay any taxes at all.
Okay. I
Sound
think that's a good plan, yeah.
Sound good?
Yeah.
Double the child tax credit from $1,000 to $2,000.
$2,000.
What do you think about that?
That's a good plan.
He's lowering corporate taxes from 35% to 21%.
Lowering corporate taxes.
Yes.
They think this is
You
Bernie's.
take out a mortgage for more than $750,000, you're going to end up paying more in taxes on that home.
I could definitely side with that.
The more money you make,
Yeah.
the more of a percentage of your income you have to pay the taxes.
Yeah, I know that people who make a lot of money aren't going to like that, but like, that's just how it is. Yeah, exactly, right? 1%, yeah.
He keeps the Obama era tax credits for clean energy.
Yeah. He keeps the Obama
Yeah.
era tax credit.
So
Yeah.
the-
100,000 billion%.
What do you think of Bernie's tax plan?
It's fantastic.
Do you feel the burn? Do you find those things to be good, bad?
I find them to be good for the most part.
Seems like a good thing.
Yeah, I like that.
I think that's a step in the right direction.
I love Bernie. I voted for him.
Yeah, sad.
I miss Bernie more now than ever.
Overall, give it an A+.
Yeah.
A plus?
It's all just rational with Bernie, and with Trump, it's not.
Now, what if I tell you these are all in Trump's tax plan?
Really?
Yes.
Oh, this is one of those things.
One of those things. What if I were to tell you that that's all in the Republican tax plan?
Is it?
What if it was?
Is it?
It is.
Alright. But why aren't they showcasing those aspects of it then?
They should be, right?
Yeah.
So what if I were to tell you that all of this was in the Republican tax plan?
Really? Well, that's really interesting.
What if I were to tell you that all that stuff was a Republican tax plan?
Oh, wow.
Well, then that's all right then.
Would you rethink the way your position on it?
Yeah.
But it make you maybe reconsider and take a closer look at it to see if it made more sense?
Sure. I mean, definitely.
Do you think now, knowing what's in that plan, you might be more open to supporting it?
Yeah.
I definitely am going to look into this because that is not what I expected.
This would be the first time I would sit here and say, well, the Republicans might be doing something well.
Yeah, I'm curious. Thanks for opening my mind to that.
I'm back. As a proud member of the 75%, I do need some help to make these videos. Now that you're getting back a fat tax deduction from President Trump's tax bill, hopefully you can send some of that my way so I can make more of these videos.
We'll let Ami run his advertisement. One of the questions that was do you understand what's happening here? Again, perception is reality. If you tell somebody this is a Republican tax plan, they don't hear anything after that, other than they know it's not good, and they're going to look for things that aren't good about it, or look at things and say that isn't good about it, not even know the difference. But if you tell them it's a Bernie Sanders tax plan, ooh, Bernie good socialist. One of the questions was asked is, why aren't they showcasing the positive aspects of the tax bill? Well, guess what? The news media won't tell you, won't even give you a positive lean with the tax plan. CBS had Friday show, I believe, Friday show. CBS Morning News, to which is an Warlock, my favorite CBS morning program, which is part of Pravda.
I think it changed to Three Witches, though, didn't it?
Yeah, well, they're still working on that. They have to jail all the men in America before they can do that rightfully, and they're working on that.
They are.
They are working on that. But they're not. You wouldn't know it's a good tax plan because the news media isn't showcasing it. It's not the Republican Party. It's not the Twitters of our president. It's the news media that is indoctrinating, poisoning you, and not letting you know the truth. But again, it wouldn't make any difference even if they did, because these folks are so indoctrinated. They just wouldn't tell them. They wouldn't tell them. You can take that in the closet, Mr. Anderson. That's probably one of our callers.
No, I'm sorry. It's already live.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah.
Caller, hang in there with us. You're on last call with B.J. Edwards and B.J. Edwards and Mr. Anderson.
Ho, ho, ho.
And good morning, yes. Again, they're not showcasing it. Even if they did, they wouldn't see it because people have been so indoctrinated. Public schools teach 4 things. They teach, number 1, life has no meaning, evolution is fact, morals are relative, multiculturalism, diversity. The more diverse we are as a nation, the stronger we are. Really? Diversity means divided? Really? Man, not God, is the measure of all things. And then the biggie, the state is your daddy. And boy, with the courts, they're trying to become the daddy. It's just incredible. So anyway, with that video, we're just trying to open your eyes to what's happening today. And we'd mentioned earlier about the 3 witches, the 2 witches and a warlock, the CBS morning news program. There was a article about Matt Damon, and he's in hot water now because Matt's basically been saying what I've been saying for the past couple of months, is that we need to be more honest about what we're dealing with here in America and not throw the baby out with the bathwater. In Vietnam, the old saying was, kill them all and let God sort out the good ones from the bad ones. Well, in today's America, it's jail all the men and let the Nazis sort the good ones out from the bad ones, the feminazis. This has just been an incredible past several months. And we're going to talk about Christmas, and we're going to talk about Christmas. Look, this Christmas I'm going to be spending with my son, my daughter, and their significant others. And that's great, and that's part of what Christmas is about. But I'm not going to be spending Christmas with another daughter and 2 granddaughters, which I've never seen. And there are a lot of people out there that are in similar situations and have been driven in similar situations. And that's the sad part of Christmas. We talk a lot about the natural family, about one man, one woman, in a monogamous, lifelong relationship with their biological and or adopted children. In America today, we have no-fault divorce, so we have a 50% divorce rate. And you've got everything from one child and one parent to one child and maybe 6 or 7 different sets of parents. And that's a shame. And that's one of the reasons we're going to have our special guests on this morning. Going to take a quick break. Mr. Anderson, you with me? Okay. Good.
Faith, discussion, and so much more. Last Call with B.J. Edwards on WTVOradio.com.
And I've got my annual Christmas cold, which I'm
thanks to me.
Yeah. I've been exposing myself a lot. I've been exposing myself. There's been a few wheezes and sneezes in studio, and maybe that's it. So bear with me with that. Imagine this. Your child has just returned from a visit with your recently divorced husband and tells you that dad did something to make him feel uncomfortable. You think about it and you immediately contact Children's Services. And the next thing you know, they've taken your children from you. Not your husband, but you. And then CPS demands that you and your parents take a drug test. And after a successful test, they take your children away from you anyway. Or imagine your children's grandmother and aunt asked to take them to the zoo and instead take them to a judge who, without any input from you at all, the children are taken from your home. Then, after spending over $200,000 in litigation fees, and with no distress having ever been proven on your behalf, you are finally reunited with your children 3 years later. Sounds impossible? A unique situation, perhaps? Sadly not. Sadly not.
No, I don't know what happened here.
In Tennessee, did you lose our caller? You got rid of one and got another one in.
I did.
Yep. Do you know who was on first? Connie or Ashley, if you had called in, please call back.
I'm on the line.
Okay, got Connie?
Yes, sir.
Okay, Connie. I think we accidentally cut Ashley off. And Ashley, please call back in.
Okay, I didn't know we had two of them coming in.
Yeah, we got two of them coming in.
I had one and I couldn't contact, so yeah.
We'll wait for Ashley to come in. And Ashley Ellithorpe is the mother of the children I was just talking about, who excuse me, who's I've got a cold. I got it especially for the show, Connie, so I could struggle. Anyway, we're talking about Ashley and her husband, the Ellithorpes, and about what happened to them.
Yes.
Connie, you were the lawyer in the case. Could you kind of relay what happened with Connie and her husband? I'm sorry, with Ashley.
With Ashley, right? That's okay. I get names mixed up too. So here's an important thing to know, that I was not the original attorney in the case. Their case started in 2011 out of the Sumner County Juvenile Court, which is just north of Nashville. And I know Ashley will join in here in a minute, and she may repeat some of the things I'm saying. But what had happened is they had relatives who had helped care for their two young children while her and her husband traveled for work. And then one weekend, they asked to take the children to the zoo separately, and then they refused to bring them back. And that was in March of 2011, and that started a long battle that didn't end for 3.5 years. I did not become an attorney in the case until basically this debacle was 2 years in existence. And they were really desperate at that point. And they really came to me. When they came to me, they were a young couple. They basically came with their hopes driven into the ground and found me. And we'll have to ask Ashley again how she was even able to locate me. But they really just looked at me and said, will we ever see our children again? So it became a battle. We were battling against, let's see, how many attorneys? About 5 different attorneys, 3 different counties, a guardian ad litem who was opposed to having the children returned to the parents. So, it was a battle on all fronts.
Ashley, do we have you on board with us?
She just called back.
She did?
We should have both of them here.
Ashley, do you have you on the phone with us this morning?
Yes, good morning.
Good. I don't know whether you caught what Connie was talking about, but Connie was talking about your situation and how you didn't initially start with her, but then somehow, some way, ended up with Connie and ended up in court with her, and she was explaining the situation with the children. And we had talked about what happened. And it's just fascinating to me, and I guess Connie kind of explained to us what ex parte is, and then Ashley, you can pipe in if you would. What is ex parte? Because the grandmother and the aunt took the children to a court, and the next thing we know, the children are no longer in the house. How did that happen? The parents weren't even invited into court.
Right. Well, this is one of the. Go ahead, Ashley.
An ex parte hearing is a hearing when one party. It's one-sided only. When one side of the party can go only. We did not know about the court hearing at all. They had went and had a emergency removal for our children. And we, as the parents, we did not know about the hearing at all. They had asked to take our children to the zoo and for a sleepover. And they had went to the court and had an ex parte emergency removal hearing. And next thing we know, we got a knock on the door, and we were served with a emergency removal for our children.
Hold on just a second, Ashley. Hold on just a second. Your mother-in-law and aunt went to court and got a decision where the children were going to be taken out of your home. They brought the children back, so the children were back in your home. They didn't say anything about this and left, right?
No, they had already had possession of my children from the sleepover from the zoo.
Okay.
Right. They did not actually even take my kids to the zoo. They had possession of my children because they told us, the parents, that they were taking them to the zoo. But what they did, they actually ran to the court and said, hey, I've got these children. I don't know where the parents are. They've abandoned their children. I don't know where they are. So here, I've got these two little kids, and I don't know where their parents are. They've abandoned them. So I need an emergency hearing because I don't know where their parents are. So I need custody of their children. So the judge signed the children over to these people. So
let me
go ahead, Connie. Go ahead.
Yeah, and let me add to that. So what these people did is they prepared this petition, and that petition was probably 7 or 8 pages long. And ultimately, at the end of the day, when I was able to get a final adjudication on that petition, what the judge said in the final order 3.5 years later was it was a parade of horribles. I mean, they alleged that Adam and Ashley had fed their children Miracle Grow. They alleged there was sexual misconduct. They alleged that they had abandoned their children. I mean, they alleged domestic violence. They alleged everything, using drugs. That they alleged that the mother was mentally unstable. I mean, they put absolutely, I mean, you would think for a judge it would be a red flag that there could be absolutely the recipe book of a bad parent. But no, these people that stole their children signed an affidavit that it was true, and based upon that feast of lies, the judge made an order for immediate removal.
Just like that.
And they also said that we were homeless. We were homeless also, but yet these people came to our home and picked up our children.
Man. How does this happen? Is this just a freak occurrence? This is just a once-in-a-lifetime occurrence?
No, and it's so unfortunate. Now, in Adam and Ashley's case, it were family members. It was kind of rogue family members that took this action against them, and different family members. So they had, multiple people working against them. And I know that it's happened. I mean, it's happened in other situations with relatives. There's another case that's ran through the Tennessee courts with Nicole Flatt where she had a young 10-month-old child. She got double pneumonia. She went to her brother-in-law and his wife and said, would you please help me with my baby? They're like, sure, we will. And while she's recovering from pneumonia, they go to court and they get an ex parte order for custody. And I mean, she has battled with them since 2010. And she lost her battle because every place she turned, they ganged up against her, and they had the child for all that period of time. But it also happens all the time with the state agencies, and that's why, the type of case that Adam and Ashley have kind of spills over to what's occurring in the juvenile courts with state agencies as well. The Department of Children's Services will do these long petitions, and they'll allege whatever they want to allege. Now, keep in mind, the parent never gets to see that petition until after it's filed with the court. So they don't get to file a competing response at the same time it's filed with the court. So in Adam and Ashley's case, the relatives did it, but the state agencies do it all the time, and they create this just list of horrible lies. They file it with the court under oath, and then the court signs an order for the children to be taken from the parents, and it takes the children weeks, months, and even years to get a hearing on it. And now you've got these children who have been separated from their parents for years, and it's just devastating.
And that's again, I'm from the and Connie, before I start blowing my mouth off here, what does ex parte mean?
So I don't know how to interpret it in Latin. You know, when you go to law school, you're thrown all these Latin terms, and you just go, okay, it means that. But I mean, in the legal world, ex parte means one party only. So it means without the other party. You know, there is no other party present. So ex parte orders, I mean, there are certain proceedings that we do ex parte, which just means there's nobody in opposition, such as an unopposed adoption or name change, something of that nature. But an ex parte order of the court means that the judge has entered an order with the information from one side only.
I think you described that as behind your back.
Yes,
yeah, that's the behind your back. Exactly.
Yeah,
that's exactly what happened.
And
and then you know, there's two terms in law that I say are the demon of the court, and one is ex parte, which means behind your back, and the other one is sua sponte, which means just because I want to from the bench. So, you know, that means when you walk in the courtroom and you think you're going into the courtroom for one thing, and then the judge all of a sudden says, well, I'm going to do this too. And I have cases in which children are being removed sua sponte in the courtroom when the parent walks in the court. And this is another horrible thing that's happening. And we have the agency filing a petition, and they say in the petition they don't even ask for custody of the children, but they set a preliminary hearing. And so the parent goes in on the preliminary hearing, and the petition will say something like, you know, the parent's mental condition is questionable, and they've been there's a concern that they may be smoking marijuana, and so we want them to cooperate with an investigation with DCS. And so they file that petition, they serve the parent, they go to court, and the parent walks into court, and, you know, let's just say the parent admits it, you know, or fails a drug screen or admits they smoke marijuana. The judge will go, well, then I'm going to put your kids in DCS custody. And the parent didn't even know walking into court that day that that was going to happen.
Connie, you're a lawyer, and you're a lawyer in Tennessee, is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Do you specialize in these type of cases? Are you dealing in the family courts a lot?
Yeah, you know, I have been practicing since 1994, and I started as a prosecutor. I got hired in Nashville metro area, which is about, I don't know, I guess back then it was probably a little over 500,000 people. And I did prosecutions for domestic violence and child abuse. And I was there probably about 3.5 years, and then I went into private practice. And, you know, I'd gone back to law school late in life. My family had been in the restaurant business. So when I got into private practice, I had hoped actually to be more part of small business litigation, but I ended up with a cadre of family law cases. And it just ultimately, over the course of the years, became something in which I took a special interest. So I guess that's the long answer. And the short answer is yes, it is a type of case that I deal with frequently.
And if you want to call in,
and by the way,
go ahead.
And by the way, in law, as lawyers, we're not allowed to use the word specialized. So if the direct answer to your question is no, I don't specialize because I'm not allowed to say that word.
Oh, beg my pardon.
Which is ridiculous, but that's the way it is.
Like I said, beg my pardon. I'm sorry about that. Didn't mean to get you in hot water. BJ.
Exactly. Well, I'm in a lot of hot water, but that's one that they told me that they put in the law, and they, you know, told me that I can't use the word specialize in any capacity.
I love it. BJ Edwards, along with Mr. Anderson, your last call, WNFFradio.com. We're going to take a real quick break, and we want to get back with Connie and Ashley, get a little more information on the case. And Connie, the question I'm going to ask you, is there a knee-jerk reaction to family matters? BJ Edwards, along with Mr. Anderson, your last call. Go ahead. We'll get back with you after break, Connie.
Yeah. Okay, great.
Last Call with BJ Edwards. Real talk about real life on WTVOradio.com.
And we are back. Callers, the telephone number to call in and talk to Connie or Ashley or BJ or even Mr. Anderson is 614-423-4220. Love to hear from you. Connie, and I'll get with you in a minute, Ashley. Connie, we were talking about this Me Too movement earlier in the show, and about how it's almost getting to the point where we're just gonna throw every man in jail and let God sort out the good ones from the bad ones. And that to me, that's a knee-jerk reaction. And I'm looking at this, and this is all new to me, although I've experienced a lot of it in my past. But this is all new to me. The amount of separation that courts are doing in natural families. They're separating families from their children and putting them in foster care. And I'm not going to say it seems like willy-nilly, but I really question a lot of what I've seen and a lot of what I've seen happening. And we're in a nation, by the way, that has a 50% divorce rate. So we have to deal with that as well. And that always causes problems. But what is going on in our court system? Why all of a sudden does it seem that children are being basically torn away from their families?
Okay, so, thank you for asking that. And what you have, you have, like, although you probably don't even realize it, you've asked me about 4 questions in one, because there are several discussions here that have to do with Title IV funding, and as well as the divorce rate, children born out of wedlock, et cetera. But let me just really, for your listeners, focus on the Title IV-E and Title IV-B funding. Good. And that is the funding that is set up for the child welfare agencies. And this started in 1974 when the federal government started funding the state agencies, but they attached strings to it. And so what the Title IV-E funding is for foster care. And that funding is unlimited. It is never subject to sequester. It is a use it or lose it taxation scheme, and it's a matching scheme. Mm-hmm. So what that means is, let's talk about use it or lose it. So if your state asks for $2 million, $2 billion, whatever, and you don't use all of that money, the next year you cannot ask for that much money. So what does that tell you? That is a reverse psychology that says you have to use that money. It secondarily has strings attached, which of course it is foster care money only. It means it cannot be used to help a family while the family is intact. They must put a child in foster care even before they can provide services to the family that may be needed. Next, it must be matched by the state. So if the state is getting $1 billion from the federal government, they have to also put in $1 billion. Now, what that means is that we now have a bureaucracy, an agency, and let's just say it has a $2 billion budget, but $1 billion is their own taxpayers' money, and $1 billion is coming from the federal government. But when you think about it, and you think about trying to be efficient or cut spending, for every dollar they cut for their taxpayers, they lose $2. So it's a terrible economic system. Number one, it makes no sense, and then all the rewards are placed in the wrong direction. And then you add on top of that the adoption money, which in 1997, so that's a little over 20 years later, what they found out over 20 years is they were putting kids in foster care and they were losing them. They just left them in foster care for years and years and years. And so in 1997, it sounded like a good idea at the time, but what they decided to do was give the states a bonus check every time they terminated a parent's rights and adopted the child into a stranger's home. So now we have it started out as like a $4,000 and $6,000 bonus check, and now it's $10,000 to $12,000. But the state has a certain quota that they have to reach before they get that bonus check. And this is funny money. I mean, this is like, your boss giving you an extra $25 because you finished a report on time and you were required to finish that report on time anyway. This is just funny money for the state. It's not money that they depend upon or rely upon in their budget. It's money that they use for benefits for their employees, such as new computers or, new training sessions and, different kinds of bonus things that they can provide. So we have a system that was set up in the 70s for putting kids in foster care, and then we have bonus money coming out 22 years later to adopt them out to strangers. In the interim, what started to develop during this time period was privatization of foster care. So now, just like in the very same time period in our history, we had the privatization of the prison system. And everybody knows what happened when we privatized the prison system. We had to populate the prisons. And so the same thing has happened with the privatization of foster care.
Whoa.
We have to populate the foster homes.
Whoa.
So that is, so now we have from 1997, 2007, 2017, here we are 20 years later. And what has happened is now, if you study cultural anthropology or social psychology and you start looking at the paradigm and the mantra and the mentality of these agencies, the mentality of these agencies is that we've got to help parents, which has also been fostered by the judicial cliche of best interest of the child. But we have to take these children away from these pitiful parents who can't keep a clean house or can't keep a job or are smoking pot or can't get their kids to school on time or won't get their children vaccinated. We need to take the children away from these substandard parents and give them better homes, plus we get a bonus check for it. So that's where we are today.
Connie, when I was in college, I took a lot of business law classes, and I loved them because I get to boil down cases, and I just loved to do that. It was a piece of cake for me. Other people struggled with it. So let me boil this down. The more children that the state puts in foster care, the more profitable it is for them. Is that a pretty good definition of what is happening here?
You're exactly right. The children are the commodity of the child welfare industry.
Yep. And Ashley, we haven't been ignoring you, and I didn't ask you on today to listen to Connie and I. I've got some questions for you, and I appreciate your patience.
No, that's okay. I can listen to Connie all day long, and I'm enjoying the show. That's great.
You should say Connie and BJ all day long, but that's okay. That's okay. I'll let that go. I'll let that go. You've gone through a 3-year torment. And by the way, how much of the time were you allowed to spend with your children during those 3 years? In a week's time or in a month's time? What were you allotted?
Well, in the beginning, I did have every other weekend visitation. Some were supervised, some were unsupervised. Connie, can you kind of go through that timeline for me? Because all and stuff.
Right. And I'll say, BJ, and I think it's important for Ashley to be here and really talk about how this emotionally affected her family. But the truth is that as the attorney, I have studied these details to, so that I can stand up in a courtroom and spew them out instantaneously. So if she's a little bit weaker in that than I am, that's the reason why, because I have to study these. But I will tell you that when they took their children in March of 2011, the parents were basically cut off for several months. And then they but it took them a year to have that case heard in a court and to get a final order in a court. And these were very young children at the time. So actually, if this was March 2011, just tell BJ how old the children were when this started.
Mackenzie, my daughter, she was almost 3. And my son was 20 months old when he was taken. I went a whole year, almost a year and a half, without speaking to them at all. It was zero contact. They cut off all contact with them. I mean, these were little babies of mine. And there was no contact. There was no birthdays, no holidays, no anything. It was, they went to the zoo and I never seen him again, for a whole year.
It was really like they were taken off the planet.
Yeah.
And after they had that first full adjudication and full hearing, although the judge found, and this is very important because there've been like 4 different petitions they've had to defend. But even though the judge they went through this whole year and all that parade of horribles that I described to you earlier on the show, the court found that none of those existed. But the court, because the children, these little tiny babies, had been now separated from their parents for over a year, the judge was like, well, we're going to reunify slowly. And so even after all of that, they forced these parents into a reunification program. Well, that lasted about 5 months, and the horrible monster relatives started all over again and unilaterally cut the parents off again. So now we're up to the summer of 2012 when the parents finally think they're on a reunification program. They file new petitions and they cut the parents off this time totally. And this is when it takes them 8 months to be able to get me involved as an attorney, and then they get another ex parte order, and it takes me another year to get a hearing. I mean, we bounced through. They went through 3 counties. They have been through probably 5 judges. They kept bouncing around from one judge to another to get their way and to keep us trying to, run the bunny trail with them into different courts. And whenever they get a judge that would not give them a good ruling or who would be antagonistic towards them, they'd quit using that judge and they'd go file in another court. So it was courtroom shopping. I mean, it was legal chaos. And I mean, the one reason that we won is, just our absolute perseverance and the fact that ultimately, and this is the honest truth, I got a judge who was a retired judge because all these judges had recused themselves when I accused them of ex parte orders and all this horrible stuff they were doing. Everybody recused themselves, and then we got a retired judge on the case who was very sensible and who really, was looking for real evidence, and, they just couldn't come up with any real evidence. And it is very sad to say, but knowing some of the younger judges that are out there, if we would have had one of those younger judges and who would have just taken all of these horrible allegations and just, taken the lives of these people, they could still not be with their children. And I've seen that happen. There are parents that I fight for that I know it's lies and I know these children need to be with their parents, and I can't win it. And I can't win it because the court is so skewed against the parents.
I cannot imagine. I'd be in jail. I would be in jail if somebody did that with my children when they were that young. I would be in jail.
And that's your first thought. You're right. That's your first thought. But then when you have your kids that are gone and you have all this anger and all these emotions built up, and that's your first thought. Oh, they kidnapped my child. I'm going to go over their house and I'm going to go get them. Well, when you have a cop call you and they tell you to get off your property, you're thinking, yeah, I'm going in that house to get my baby. Well, you can either listen to them and leave, or you can take the risk of never getting your children back. You can either fight the system, do what you're supposed to, take every step and have a straight mind and stay focused for your children because of the love that you have for your child. Or you can go and be put in jail and take the risk of never getting them back before the love that you have for your children.
And let's be honest, Ashley, putting you in jail was part of their agenda.
The in-laws or the government? The in-laws or the government?
The in-laws.
Okay.
The in-laws.
The in-laws. They did. I did go to jail for the in-laws. I did. They did actually have me put in jail over false allegations for a couple hours. But, hey, that was a sacrifice that I made for my children.
Actually,
yeah, but then they could go to court, and what they did is they tried to go to court and talk about how hostile she was at an exchange.
Exactly.
And, and that she'd been arrested, and She was a violent person, so therefore she would be violent against her children. And let me tell you something else this is real critical about, because I am outraged about this issue. So after we go through this entire battle, and Adam and Ashley are putting out thousands of dollars to hire a private attorney so they can fight for their kids, one of the relatives filed a petition to terminate their parental rights because they had not paid child support on the child they had stolen.
I was going to ask that question. Ashley, did you and Adam have to pay money for the children when they were in government custody?
Well, they weren't.
They had
hold on. They were not in government custody. They were never in government custody. Right. They were always with relatives.
Okay.
Right.
Well, the government was basically dictating who the. I got you.
Well, true, exactly. You're right. You are right about that. It was the government who's the one who was dictating who had possession, and they did not pay. It is, but I will tell you again. I think that was part of this setup, because grounds for termination is failure to pay child support. And here, Adam and Ashley, who are, not only suffering from deep emotional pain from the loss of their children, but also deeply offended that these relatives, who even after losing their case refused to comply with court orders and reunite them with their children and were stealing their children, they were also offended as to why should they be paying support to somebody who's stolen their child, and if they can't support the child that they've stolen from me, why did they have him anyway? And so they did not pay support. But that's one of the things that then the relatives turned around and tried to terminate their parental rights because they hadn't paid child support.
Absolutely.
Why did you even take my child if you couldn't even afford them? Why did you take them from our home if you couldn't even support them? That blows my mind.
We're going to take a break on the run. This is B.J. Edwards, along with Mr. Anderson. Your last call. 614-423-4220. We're speaking to Connie Reguli and to Ashley Ellithorpe about just an incredible situation. This is America. This isn't Russia. What in heaven's name is going on? Your last call, WTVOradio.com.
Faith, discussion, and so much more. Last Call with B.J. Edwards on WTVOradio.com.
And we are back. Ashley, if this has happened to me, and I've gone through all this, and I managed not to end up in jail, which I doubt seriously whether I could have avoided that exercise. I'm kind of an emotional dude. If we'd gone through all this for 3 years and I get my children back, I'm not going to take them anywhere. I'm not going to expose them to anybody. They're going to be living in a bubble around me, and I'm not going to talk to anybody about anything. But you didn't do that, did you?
It's very difficult. It's very difficult. In the beginning, you kind of want to do that because you are scared. You are terrified that someone or anyone can come and just kidnap your child. I mean, because it was relatives. It's your family. If your family can come kidnap your child, it can be anybody, right?
Yep.
So, no. I mean... I want to. Go ahead.
Well, and I think you need to be honest, though, that for the first year, you pretty much did keep him in a bubble. I mean, it was like, I'm afraid to take him to the doctor. I'm afraid to let anybody babysit. I'm afraid to take him to daycare. I'm just going to keep them home, and we're going to live a little happy life at home.
Well, and another thing, I wanted to spend as much time with them as possible. I had just lost them for a very long time. And yes, it was very traumatic for me. It was very traumatic for them. We wanted to rebuild our home life again. And, it was. We did do that for a little while. But then we started to rebuild and we started to step out more. And then I wanted to spread our story around. And Connie, you've helped me do that. We started our Innocent Families group. You've started your Family Forward Project group. We did our story on the news. I wanted to spread our story out to help others, educate them, and support other mothers or other families that has happened. To help them what has happened to us, to support them and let them know that this can happen to anyone. This isn't just something that happens to low-income families or high-income families. This can happen to anyone. And people need to be aware of that.
And this is across the U.S. This is across the USA. This isn't just in Tennessee. This is across the USA.
Oh, this with my group that I have on Facebook, which I think I have about 5,500 members in my Facebook group. It's Innocent Families Against Family Court Corruption. I have members all over the U.S. And this happens everywhere, all over the U.S.
And I want to say something else, too, and I want to just expand this to the whole family court. The family court system is an industry in and of itself. So it spreads across the whole juvenile system, the whole situation that we're talking about here, the government kidnapping. I mean, all of these courts are a little shops, so their caseloads are important. They get their funding based on caseloads. Judges, I've worked with judges for 25 years, and judges have egos, and, they're sort of king of their little fiefdom, and they like having that control.
Wait a minute. Judges have egos?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, they do. Yeah. And so the whole system is very, it's a very bizarre, it's like, it's not really, it's so it's sort of anti the American value, family, traditional aspect.
They want control. You mentioned ego. They know better than you. Schools know better than you what to teach your children. The courts know better than you how to bring up your children. And you're thrown into that environment. And again, that's part of that four parts of what our school systems do. The state's your daddy. We know best what's for you. We'll tell you what to do. We'll tell you when to get your shots. We'll tell you what shots to get, and we'll tell you how to live the life. And I agree with you, Connie, that it's a business. I know the prison system is a business. I know there's a lot of senators and or representatives that have monetarily bought into those prison systems, and they do get a lot of money out of them. So I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I guess I did interrupt you, so apologize.
No, that's okay. And I'll tell you, the same is true with foster care and adoption agencies, by the way.
Yes,
a lot of politicians have investments in foster care. If you go to, and I'm going to divert here for just a minute and then go back, but there is a website called opensecrets.org, which shows you who the lobbyists are in Washington, and you can search by topic. And if you put in foster care, you come up with 114 lobbyists for foster care. So that just kind of gives you an idea. So, I want to say with the courts, I've done this for 25 years, and I've seen changes in the system. And, 20 years ago, our judges in family court kind of had the attitude that we're not going to micromanage a family. If people are getting divorced, of course, at that time, it was pretty much, the whole standard visitation thing of every other weekend, and they didn't really veer much from that. Yep. But they took the attitude that the children are going to have one home, the other parent's unfortunate visitor, but from there they said, we're not going to micromanage how you raise your children. So they didn't get into managing how decisions were made related to medical or religion or vaccines or, where the kids are going to go to church or what extracurricular activities they're going to participate in. And now I will tell you the courts are flooded with cases where parents are fighting over whether or not they made one parent made the right decision for the kid to be in 4-H. I mean, it's incredible. Wow. And the amount of money that families put into the family court system to resolve that kind of dispute is just horrendous.
Ashley, I think you were going to say something.
No, I was just listening. Wow, I'm amazed. I'm amazed by all of it.
Well, yeah, you have a right to be amazed. You've been touched by it. You've been touched strongly by it. And you both.
And we have so many.
Go ahead.
And there's so many families, though, that are affected. And, you said there's a 50% divorce rate, which is right. And one time I looked up just the vital stats in Tennessee, and I looked up the marriages and the divorces, and this was probably 10 years ago, so these stats need to be refreshed. But at the time, there were 66,000 marriages and 33,000 divorces. And so if you take a divorce and probably 60%, maybe even 75% of those divorces have children involved. And you look at the number of people that are affected, and that was just the state of Tennessee. And that does not include the cases that involve children born out of wedlock. And, we now know today, that children are born out of wedlock all the time. It's not just, the poverty or the ones who are, mentally incapable and make a mistake or get raped or whatever. There are all classes of citizens who have children born out of wedlock. And those cases end up in an entirely different court. And so the number of children that are being affected is just tremendous. Here's another important thing that plays into this mix is the number of children that have been deemed as homeless by the United States government. And I just pulled that report off. I don't know if I can put my hand on it here while we're talking. Okay. But basically it says, this report, and this is a government report, says that the average in the United States is 1 out of every 20 children are going to be a victim of homelessness in a given year. Now, that is an incredible amount, and that means we have poverty issues. And those poverty issues are being used against parents to be able to take the children and put them into government-funded foster care. So let me give you an example. Let's say a boyfriend, girlfriend, they don't even have to be married. They have a couple kids, 2 or 3 little kids, little tiny kids, like under 5. And he's a contractor. He does drywalling, or, he's a carpenter or something. And he gets bad on his luck, and he can't find a job. So now you have this family of 5 that's homeless. And so they end up, maybe they can stay in a week-to-week motel while they have a little bit of money left, but they're considered homeless by the government. So now those children are determined to be homeless, which is a part of the dependency and neglect proceeding of the government. So they take those 3 children away from this couple. They put them in a foster home, and the foster parent gets paid $3,000 a month. And if the foster parent decides to, and the foster parent, and that's $3,000 tax-free dollars a month. They also get free medical care. They often get free daycare, and they get a social worker to help drive them to, medical appointments or whatever they need to do. So now you adopt those children, and not only does the state get a bonus check of $35,000, they also, that foster parent who's now an adoptive parent gets a continued sustenance check every single month of $3,000 a month until the child turns 18. And now the child who's 18 gets a free education and gets free health insurance until they turn age 26. So that is the government family that we have created, so that the child becomes the commodity of the government, facilitating this socially engineered family. Does it make any sense to you?
No, it doesn't. And we're going to have to take a break. And when we come back, I'm going to pose a question that you can think about when we come back. How do we separate the cases that have real abuse, physical, emotional, sexual parents with serious, or parents with serious addictions such as heroin? How do we separate those from the case of Ashley? This is B.J. Edwards along with Mr. Anderson, your last call, WTVO Radio, our Christmas edition, and we're talking about families, and when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about the natural family, too. Hang in there with us, 614-423-4220.
Keeping you informed. This is Last Call with B.J. Edwards.
Ho, ho, ho. Merry Christmas. B.J. Edwards. And we have a couple guests on the phone today, Connie Reguli and Ashley. How do you pronounce your last name, Ashley?
Ellithorpe.
Ellithorpe. Okay, Ashley Ellithorpe. I had gotten it right. I posed a question, but
Yeah,
before,
you did.
Yeah, that doesn't happen very often here, so good for me.
It really doesn't, no. Yeah, great job.
The natural family, and Connie, you and I have not spoken about this, but where I'm coming from is I have a group, and I direct the group, and we're trying to get the concept of the natural family to be something that we look at as a nation, whether it be our educational institutions, our government, our business. And when I talk about natural family, I'm talking about one man and one woman, and that is one blue and one pink, in a lifelong committed relationship with their biological and or adopted children. Now, we have no-fault divorce, which we've talked about before, and we have pornography, we've got drug abuse, we've got Sharia law, we've got gay marriage. We have everything attacking that natural marriage. And I think the natural marriage is the thread that holds this nation together. I know that it is at least the foundation. I'm talking about a natural family. And I know as we're talking today, just take a look at the 50% divorce rate, and we haven't even talked about the children out of wedlock, and all the other things that we throw into the mix. So 95%, and that's probably a maybe a low percentage, but 95% of the families in America are not natural. And as a result, we're experiencing what we're experiencing. We're experiencing knee-jerk reactions. We're experiencing situations where the government is getting money and influencing how families look, how they think they should look. And I think that if we can get focused on the natural family as the ideal, I'm not saying it has to exist. Well, I'd love to have it exist now, but I mean, I've been divorced, so I wouldn't fit into that. And I come from an abusive family, so I wouldn't fit in from that end. How do we get from point A to point B? I think it's by focusing. You are what you think about, by focusing on the natural family. And I wanted to get that little advertisement out and get that idea out. And I'd ask you before we took the break, how do we separate the families? The Ashley Ellithorpes and Adam Ellithorpes, how do we separate their case from the real cases of abuse?
Okay, that's really not a very difficult question. When I started my law career, I started as a prosecutor. As a prosecutor, you work with a law enforcement agency that investigates crime. Child abuse, emotional abuse, sexual abuse are crimes. They have people who are specifically trained to investigate crime and to document it and to create evidence. And they have a duty, they have an obligation when they go to a magistrate or when they go to a general or a grand jury, but particularly if they go to a magistrate to get a warrant on somebody, if they've not done a proper investigation and if they don't expose to the magistrate that they also have exculpatory information that would diminish the probability of that crime, they can be sued for a civil rights violation for malicious prosecution or for negligent investigation. So, and there's a good case out of Kentucky called the Wesley v. Campbell case. If anybody wants to look it up, it kind of describes what that is. But here we have no such accountability at the social worker level. When I do a presentation, part of my presentation is a totem pole. And at the top of that totem pole, I draw I make little notes about who are the people at the top of the totem pole when it comes to child welfare. You have well-trained psychologists, you have well-trained pediatricians, you have people who study adverse childhood experiences, social workers who have PhDs, and then you keep going down the totem pole and you have the neighborhood pediatrician, you have the teacher, you get all the way down to social workers. Social workers who work for the agencies, number one, are not licensed, so they have no license or accountability. Number two, they don't even have to have a degree in social work. So they typically have a bachelor's degree. They take about a 40-hour training course with the agency, and now they're investigative social workers. You have the people at the very bottom of the totem pole, the people with the least experience, the least amount of income, and the least amount of accountability, making these decisions related to the children. Secondarily is I'm afraid what the system has become so infested with dollars and bonuses and the financial incentives that these social workers, and part of their inherent training is removing children, because they know that their job is dependent upon Title IV funds as well. As a matter of fact, some of the actual social work programs that they have in some of the universities, Title E provides for scholarships for those programs, and they train social workers about Title E and how that funding is directed. So you have an improper investigation, number one. Number two, you have a system that is so infested with the financial funding that it can't see the forest for the trees. So you have all these ability of these judges to do ex parte, which they do all the time, based upon this judicial cliche of best interest of the child and contrary to the welfare to the child, without the court making specific findings. So our laws are bad, the funding's bad, the investigation's bad. I mean, it's just in every area. And finally, let me say, because I always want to make sure I put this out there, there's an inherent conflict of interest within the state agency itself. So you have a state agency, and for instance, in Tennessee, it's called the Department of Children's Services. Now, you would think from the title of the agency that they are an agency out there to provide help and services for families and children. But what they are is they handle two conflicting roles. They do the services part of it, but before they even do services, they do the investigation and prosecution. So you can't put your hand in both pockets at the same time. You can't be the prosecuting agency and the service agency and the defense agency at the same time. When I was a prosecutor, we were always working against the public defender's office. And so you had the public defender's office saying, my guy is innocent and he needs, some help. I'm going to get him mental health treatment, and then we're going to get his case dismissed. And as the prosecutors, we were like, no, we got to punish this crime. But we were two totally separate different agencies. Until we bust up these agencies and make them two separate agencies, we need to have an agency of Family and Children's Services, and we need to have an agency, a total separate agency, separately funded, separately staffed, without the Twain's crossing, in which was the prosecution of child abuse and neglect. The agency of child prosecution and neglect needs to be directly tied to law enforcement. So they are trained as law enforcement investigators. They create evidence files. They have an evidence room where they take evidence, and they allow the parents to have certain rights that criminals have. I mean, criminals have more rights than parents do. Criminals have the right not to be interviewed by their prosecuting agency. And parents don't. If parents don't cooperate with the Department of Children's Services, they now have become labeled as hostile to the agency or uncooperative. When they go to court, they now come to court and say, well, the parent's uncooperative. And they have these judges convinced that a lack of cooperation means that you're not a good parent. Yep. I even went into a case where I had a client who was ordered to do in-home services, and he agreed to do it. And so you have this in-home service agency come in who's going to do family counseling. And the first thing she does is she has them sign this document that says that what you tell us is not confidential. However, the print is so small that nobody takes the time to read it. And then she makes a direct inquiry about the entire history of the family. Do you and your wife ever fight? Do you ever drink? Do you ever do this? Do you ever spank your children? Do you ever blah, 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 blah? And then the agency calls that person into court to testify. And when the parents have been totally honest, and no parent is perfect, they say, well, the parents admitted to me that they're smoking pot, about, 2 or 3 times a month. And, they have spanked their children. And, they do get in fights once in a while over finances and things like that. So it's a very unstable household. And that is how they continue to keep these children captive and keep them a commodity, an ongoing and continuous commodity of the system. The way the Title IV funding is set up, they can keep these children. They basically have a free ride for 15 months. So they want to keep the child in the system. The shelf life of a child in foster care is 15 months. And so within 15 months, at the end of that, they've got to make a determination whether they're going to give the child back or whether they're going to terminate the parental rights and put them into the permanent foster as adoptive home. Mm-hmm. So you will see parents who are sending a message on Facebook. It's like, okay, after I've fought for a year and a half, they're giving me my kids back.
Yes. Yeah.
So they have this shelf life that they have to be reportable and accountable to the federal government, but they have this shelf life of 15 months.
Absolutely. I was going to ask you how do we change this, but everything hinges on public opinion in America. We're continually in a public opinion war. You hear it on the news media, whether it be about President Trump and the tax plan, or they're always trying to shade it a certain way. And how do we get into this public opinion war? And how do we get the numbers we need to get? I know that you have a website, or that you have a Facebook page, and Ashley has a Facebook page, and that's a great place to start. And that we need to make people aware. And I was discussing with Ashley the other day, this is kind of like if you're a Christian, you know who Jesus Christ is, and you know what it means, so you accept him, and you internalize that information. Once you internalize it, faith without works is dead. You have to go out and act on that. So we're into the educational phase, but we haven't even gotten that done properly, because what you're telling us today is educating me. It's also educating our listeners. How do we win this public opinion war?
Well, I do want to say to you that, even Jesus only started with 12, right? So, and many, many great movements in this world have started with one person. I mean, Nelson Mandela in South America set aside apartheid. He sacrificed his life for it. Susan B. Anthony and a handful of women got the women the right to vote. So Martin Luther King Jr., started with one person and spoke his word out to thousands and millions of people. So we are in the right direction. I've made a lot of headway. I have gotten the National Federation of Republican Assemblies to adopt a resolution related to the child welfare agencies, and I'm working with them. I am doing presentations in different forums. I've traveled to several different states in 2017. I already have some that I'm starting to schedule for 2018. Every time we do presentations, we're videotaping them, we're posting them. I'm getting several people contacting us and joining our Facebook group of the Family Forward Project, which is a public group. So we're up to about 8,500 people, and that's we're using as our center to post events that we're doing, to post, some opinions, but primarily news stories, legislative actions, etc. We have submitted our paperwork for a nonprofit on the Family Forward Foundation, which will be, starting to make its debut in 2018. I fully intend to raise $1 million for the Family Forward Foundation. I am one of those people. I'm 65 years old. I've had several different successes and failures in my life. And, when I have an attitude about something and I want to succeed, I have the ability to speak it and make it happen.
I would have guessed that.
It takes a lot of work, and it takes a lot of coordination. I mean, I created a law firm out of nothing and started out of nothing. And I have a friend who's known me for 35 years, and, he's very successful in his own right. And, his comment to me is, Connie, there are a lot of people who can take something and make something bigger. He goes, but you have the ability to take nothing and make something bigger. So, we have, that's the attitude we have to have. I've got the attitude of build it and they will come. I've done several. I've been to Iowa, Washington, D.C., Florida, Arizona, Seattle, and then on December 8th, I went to Detroit, and we had an amazing, we had about 50 people in the Charles H. Wright Museum of African American History, because this affects the African American community just grossly. So we're continuing that march forward, and it's, we've got to, the people who've been hurt, this is the most important part of this, the people who've been hurt by the system have are very, they're damaged, they're injured people, and it is the people who come through it and win. Sometimes they just want to escape from it. They don't want to talk about it. They want to go try to live their life, in just a sheltered way. And the people who lose are embarrassed and hurt and don't want to, want to talk about it because they feel like they're bad parents, or they end up incarcerated, or they end up in just some horrible situation. And we've got to embrace those people who've been through this system and know that they're not all perfect. I mean, there are parents who do have drug issues, and I accept that, but we can provide them stability, and we can provide them resources. And we've got to turn to our churches. We've got to compel our churches to have domestic missions and focus more on our domestic missions than on our foreign missions. And there are a lot of people who'd be angry at me for saying that, but we've got a lot of work to do here at home. And if we do not do this work at home, our next generation is going to be in big trouble.
You're singing my song about the churches. You're singing my song. I'll be honest with you. I tried for 2 decades to try to get the church to speak relevant to what was happening in terms of today. And I'm not talking about peace, love, joy, and understanding. I got all that in the 60s that I needed, and that's what the church teaches now. But they need to get more engaged in the culture. This is B.J. Edwards, along with Mr. Anderson, your last call. This is WNFFradio.com, WNFFradio.com. We're going to be coming back, and in the last 15-minute segment, I want to get a little more detail in terms of what you've been talking about, Connie. But Ashley, I'd like to know what you're doing, what your plans are for the next few months, few years. B.J. Edwards along with Mr. Edwards. I'm sorry, Mr. Anderson. I've got a head cold. Give me a break.
Faith, discussion, and so much more. Last Call with B.J. Edwards on WTVOradio.com.
B.J. Edwards along with Ashley Ellithorpe and Connie Reguli. And we're talking about Christmas and how it's sad for some folks that have been separated from their children. And Ashley, I'd like to know what you have an organization that you formed as a result of your experience. What is the name of that organization again? And what is contact information?
It is Innocent Families Against Family Court Corruption. It's a Facebook group. It's a closed and private Facebook group on Facebook, and it is a group that I and my husband have created. It is there for help and support for families that have went through what we have been through. If I can help and support a family, a mother that has been through the pain that we have been through, especially during holidays, birthdays, the time that they have lost like we did, I never want a mother to have to feel the pain that we did, ever. It's a horrible thing, and for them to feel alone like we did, it's horrible. And if I can help and be there for them, then that's what that group is there for.
Okay, the name of the group again. The name of the group again, because it's kind of a long name. Innocent Families
Against Family Court Corruption.
Family Court Correction.
And we have about 5,500 members. And we're all there to help and support one another. We're all there for the same cause. It's a very supportive, helpful group, and it's a very loving group for everyone to come and join.
Okay. And your plans for the next several months?
To continue to support and help, and along beside Connie, we're all there for the same purpose, to help families, to keep them together as one, to reunify the children with their families, to keep everyone whole.
Connie and Ashley, I'll ask you both a question. Neither one of you can address it. I'm in a situation where I don't know my daughter. I probably will never know my grandchildren. And not from my standpoint, but I'm thinking about my daughter and my grandchildren. Someday, they may regret not getting to know me. And there's nothing I can do about that now. And I'm not alone. I know of other men that are in the same situation that I'm in, even worse. If there's some way you can use that in your organization, feel free to do so. But at this point, what can I do?
Well, BJ, this is what I call generational genocide. And, it is so... the history is built on generations. I mean, we have the whole entire Old Testament is about the genealogy of Jesus Christ, right? I mean, it's like, where did he come from? Who were they? Who are these people? I read this incredible book one time called Cosmic Memory, and it was about how, we carry from one generation to the other a memory within our cells. So, it's such a hard situation. I don't know what the cure for is. I have clients who have come to me who are in similar situations. It's just so horrible that the court would allow this to happen or would create it or generate it. And I don't have an answer for it. I mean, it's something that systematically as a nation, we need to begin to heal from. And before we close this program, I do want to say one other thing. You asked Ashley how to say her last name, but you've mispronounced my last name about 6 times.
Oops.
So,
well, so I should pronounce it how?
Chuckling.
I should pronounce it how?
And I know that's why Ashley was chuckling a couple times. But it's Reguli. It's just like regular, only it's got a Reguli at the end of it. So I don't hold any contempt against you because I answer to anything that is vaguely sounding similar. So, but because my name is getting out there a little bit more, I think it's important that people understand how to pronounce it.
Connie Reguli, Connie Reguli, Connie Reguli. There you go.
Thank you.
So, and Connie, you're do you have a webpage now?
All right, so our public group is the Family Forward Project on Facebook. Right now, that is our main avenue of internet connection. I do have the FamilyForwardFoundation.com website. I do have it sketched out, and I do have it up. It's really only semi-functional while we go through the approval process for the 501c3. I don't have the membership tabs and things like that set up, but we're starting to organize how we want it to look. We're going to have regional and state contacts in there. We'll start doing advocacy programs, et cetera. So there'll be more published about that on the Family Forward Project as we keep going. And also the Family Forward Project is where I post all the events that we will have coming up in different states.
Connie Reguli, Connie Reguli. I'm so embarrassed. I apologize.
That's okay.
He's bright red right now.
Yeah, I am.
Lighting up the studio.
I really appreciate both of your participation today. I wish we'd gotten more callers. I don't know what's going on. They're all quiet this week. Maybe they're wrapping presents and listening. I don't know. But to not have interest in what is going on here and what is going on in this nation, again, the family is the cornerstone. And what happened to you, Ashley? I'm boiling. I'm not red from being embarrassed, Mr. Anderson. I'm red from. I'm still mad about that.
That makes sense.
I can't imagine. And I don't know how I could have kept myself out of jail. I really don't, because those are my children.
Yeah.
How dare you? How dare you do that? Who are you to come in and take my children away? And to be treated.
You've heard that many times, haven't you, Connie? We've said the same thing. Connie's heard that.
It's just it's astonishing, and it's sad. But and what is more even worse is that this isn't uncommon. And again, I don't know what's caused this. I'm sure it's some kind of a knee-jerk reaction for a congressman to say, okay, you get X number of $1,000 for this to encourage children to be taken out of natural homes and put into foster care homes. It just doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't make sense at all.
It's that foreign government.
Well, and so BJ, tell me about your show. I know you have the show online, but is it also something that we can share and post after this show is over today?
Yeah. I'll send you links to the show, to both of you.
Okay, great.
And you can parse it up. Just give us a little bit of credit. You can cut it. You can cut out.
Can we? Is it?
Go ahead.
Is it one we can download as well?
I don't, Mr. Anderson.
Yes.
Okay. Apparently you can. And you can edit out.
Mr. Anderson for help.
You can edit out my butchering Connie's last name. And again, I apologize for that. I'm embarrassed about that. But again, I wish you both a very Merry Christmas. I think it's terrific, Ashley, that you have your children at home with you now, and I know you've had them for the past couple of years. Wait a minute, we got a call coming in. You think you can get him, Mr. Anderson?
No number. Add to group.
Okay, let's see what happens here.
I added to the group.
All right, caller? Caller.
Hello?
Yeah, you're on the line with B.J. Edwards and Mr. Anderson. And your first name?
Hey, good morning, everybody. This is Gil from Colorado.
All right, Gil. What's your question?
First of all, I just wanted to applaud Connie for her pithy description of the system. I've been looking at it for quite some time, and I've heard a lot of different folks talk about it, but I think she summarized it very eloquently and very succinctly. So, congrats on that. The question I have for Connie is this. With all that's going on out there, I'm sure there's got to be one or two cases in which you can bring this into federal court. And I guess my question is, have you guys thought about that?
Okay, that's a great question. Okay. And I don't know if there'll be enough time to answer that today, but let me do the best I can.
Go ahead.
So
We'll allow for it.
Okay, number one, going into federal court means you have to file some type of a civil rights violation under 42 USC 1983, which is a civil rights statute. Now, that is like asking an attorney to file a 1983 action is like me turning to you and saying, how would you like to work for the next 5 years for free? And it's going to cost you about $50,000 in expenses and depositions and transcripts, et cetera. Out of your own pocket, and then you may get paid and you may not get paid. Okay, so that's the reality of it. I've done some 1983 actions. They're extremely difficult. They're very technical. The federal law on these issues is very complex. Sean McMillan in California has done some. He's had some success. Another layer of the problem is that we used to have all of the states used to be operating under county agencies, and now most of them are state agencies. In California, Sean still is working with county agencies, which is a good thing because you cannot sue the state, but you can sue a county, and there are certain requirements and certain hoops you have to jump through before you can bring the county into it. But you have to sue the individuals. And so now you're telling the attorney that you've already asked to work for 5 years for free. You're saying, and by the way, you're going to have to sue Betty Sue, social worker, who makes $30,000 a year. And yeah, let's say in the best world, you get a $3 million judgment against Betty Sue, who makes $30,000 a year. So you have all of these complicated issues. Now and then you have the statute of limitations. So in Tennessee, the statute of limitations on a civil rights action is a year. And that is a year from the date of injury. Now, most of these families, like Adam and Ashley, I am spending 3 years fighting to get relief, and I can't file a federal court until I've got that relief. And now the date of the injury, which occurred 3 years ago, is well past the statute of limitations. So you have hurdle after hurdle after hurdle to jump over and before you can even think about doing this. Now, what I hope to do, there are a couple of, I do have a couple cases that I'm sitting on right now that I'm considering filing for very specific reasons. One of them is a medical kidnap in which I hope to tie in the private medical facility because they took on the role of being an investigator in this case, and I want to make that an issue. I mean, mostly civil rights cases are done for policy statements because they're so long, they're so hard. You want to create law, you want to create Miranda v. USA, Marbury versus Madison. I mean, you want to create a law out there that other people can rely on in the future. I hope that through the nonprofit, if we can raise money, if I can raise the money so that my entire firm can be funded by the nonprofit, then I can take on filing on behalf of children, relatives, and or parents, civil rights actions to be able to get law that will correct the system. But to turn to Connie Reguli, who's just out there trying to make a buck, doing a few divorces and, hoping some parents can pay me to get their kids out of DCS custody, it's like climbing Mount Everest with all of those obstacles in front of us. So, yes, a federal lawsuit is a great thing to do if you can meet all those challenges along the way.
Well, and thank you for that explanation. I understand, you were focusing on 1983. There are other avenues that I'm aware of that you can take such matters into federal court. And I don't know whether we've got time here on the show to go over all of that, but I'm more than happy to speak with you offline, along with BJ and Kevin, as, they know me pretty well in my situation, because I know of a lot of folks who've tried the route of 1983, and they run into everything that you have just described. And on top of that, they run into absolute and qualified judicial immunity. And you mentioned the 11th Amendment with states' immunity and all of that. There are a lot of technicalities. I'm very aware of those. But there are other avenues, that folks are looking into. And I know that there are people out there, continuing to fight the system. One thing that frustrates me is getting them all around the same table talking, strategically and tactically about how to do it. Everyone wants, certainly support. But frankly, right now we're up against the juggernaut, and, it's nice to have a funded war chest, but there are folks out there on the front line in the trenches right now, who are battling the system. And how do we give them ammunition and allow them to, probe the enemy's defenses so that we learn, and then we come back, with a tactical plan that can actually not only expose, but, hold a lot of these, folks to account for the racketeering and everything else.
Gil and Connie, we can hold this discussion for another day. We've got one more caller coming in, and both of you be patient with me. Caller, your first name, please.
Adam Ellithorpe.
Oh, well, hello, Adam Ellithorpe. Welcome to the conversation.
Hey, I appreciate that. I was actually driving into work here this morning, and glad I'm getting to patch in with you guys.
Well, what's on your mind?
Well, I'm actually Ashley's husband, and this is part of my story that you guys were talking about today, so I appreciate you guys getting it out there and helping us get the awareness raised about the corruption and the families just getting taken advantage of and just drilled through the system that's ruining a lot of lives.
Well, good. We're glad you're a listener today, Adam.
Yes, sir. I appreciate you guys.
And I appreciate.
And I would just like to.
Go ahead, Connie.
And I would like to make a short comment about what Gil said. I'm aware that people are considering other actions such as RICO or XREL, actions. Again, you've still got the other things to overcome of getting somebody who's intellectually competent enough in the legal world, such as an attorney, to be able to agree to work for free over an extended period of time, which is just economically insurmountable. And then again, the complexity of it. So, I also have looked at, a lot of people think, we should file a RICO, and, I agree there's probably a RICO action there, but the legal complexity of this is very difficult. And, if some attorney wants to jump in there and, I can sit on the side and help talk to them, then that's fine. But I think, our reality is the funding.
Well, but that is so true. But at the same time, you're looking at victims who have been raped, from their family assets already. Not to mention, their children have been taken away. So it's kind of a catch-22, where we've got folks who have the knowledge who are asking for funding, and the victims don't have funding to support. They will encourage you, and they'll give you their encouragement and backing, moral support, and all of that, and and anything else they can provide, but they're strapped. This isn't just Title
that's why
4D
you may not
and
have
4B. This is Title 4D as well. If you want to talk about family courts.
And you may not have heard me talking about, creating the nonprofit, but, unfortunately, even the best attorneys and the most benevolent attorneys in the world have their own bills to pay. So, I mean, it's you've got to face reality that that's part of the financial conundrum that we're in. And I give hundreds of hours away every year to give advice to people, to, I'm working on a civil rights action right now that in a year's time has 5,000 pages filed in federal court, and I've spent about 700 hours in that I've not been paid for yet, and I may or may not be paid on, but it's one that I really believe in. So, but that is a big sacrifice that I knew I was taking when I filed that lawsuit in 2014. And here we are, 2017, and I've still not received a dime on it. And fortunately, I've been able to manage my practice so that I have other, we keep generating other income. But that financial issue is just a reality of something that has to be addressed.
Connie, I appreciate you. Ashley, I appreciate you. And Gil, I'll try to connect you and Connie up, and you can continue the conversation. And I think there's a lot to be said there. But again, Ashley, Connie, Adam, I appreciate first of all what you've done, and your patience, and it's great that you have your children back. I think that is just incredible.
Thank you.
And I'm so sorry that you had to go through what you had to go through. Hopefully, something there's going to be something down the road that you're going to say, yeah, I saw God working there, and hopefully that's how it'll turn out.
Absolutely.
Again,
you're absolutely correct, BJ.
All righty. Connie, thank you. And Adam, thank you. And
hey, I appreciate it.
Mr. Anderson, can we go to break? When we come back from break, we're going to do a little Christmas. Got to do a little bit of Christmas. B.J. Edwards along with Mr. Anderson, your last call, WTVO Radio. I'm sorry, WNFFradio.com.
We're still on both this year.
Are we? Okay.
Chestnuts roasting on an open fire, Jack Frost nipping at your nose, Yuletide carols being sung.
Stay tuned for Last Call with your host, B.J. Edwards.
Bethlehem innkeeper has been getting a...
Got it? Go ahead.
I got to go back and start it over.
We're back. B.J. Edwards along with Mr. Anderson, your last call, WNFFradio.com. That was an interesting discussion towards why do they always wait? Why do they always wait to the end of the conversation? Why is that?
The Bethlehem innkeeper has been getting a bum rap. Christmas seasons and sometimes in between, pulpits are aflame with righteous wrath over the Jesus born in a manger story. The very idea that men had waited through 20 centuries of darkness and the long-sought light had to enter the world through the window of a stable. Prophets of the Old Testament had told them where to expect the baby and approximately when, and yet the innkeeper did not even reserve a room. Well, now let's hold the phone here. The innkeeper's been getting a bum rap. If Robert Schuller was not the first to remind us, he was certainly the most eloquent when once upon a Christmas time he re-recited the Bethlehem story, and he protested that the innkeeper had become the victim of cheap shots by preachers and teachers and pageant writers. The Bible does not accuse the innkeeper. Joseph did not complain to the innkeeper. Mary did not complain. Actually, the stable was a cave in a hillside where the cattle lived. It had many advantages over a room at the inn. The inn in Bethlehem was no Marriott hotel. It was a place where the masses collected, ruffians and thieves and heavy drinkers, rowdy men. In the inn, there would have been no soft straw bed. Mary would have had to lie on a hard floor. The inn was jam-packed at tax-paying time. The groans and natural screams of a teenage mother delivering her first child would have been overheard in other rooms. In the stable was privacy, where nobody would overhear her labor. No leering eyes would peer upon a woman giving birth. The stable was safe and secure and warmer than the inn. The inn was without heat, no furnaces, no more than one lobby fireplace. But the wide nostrils of cattle exhaling steam, breathing in the cold air and breathing out the warm air, warmed the stable. What might Joseph have done to protect his tax money against the thieves and the ruffians in the inn? Yet in the safety of the stable, there was no fear of a knife at one's throat in the night. So God and the innkeeper cooperated to provide a perfect place for Jesus to be born. A safe place, a quiet, soft, warm, comparatively comfortable, perfect place. And besides, the much maligned innkeeper of Bethlehem had given the best that he had. And isn't that all that is asked of any of us?
Did we lose him?
I don't know.
Must have lost him. Sorry about that, Paul. That was Paul Harvey. I don't know. As you gather around, by the way, swaddling clothes. Swaddling clothes is like wrapping a child up almost like a mummy, so they can't hardly move. Got your arms wrapped up, the whole thing, and that was basically to keep the baby still when they were sleeping. Swaddling clothes. You didn't know that, did you, Mr. Anderson? As you gather around the dining room table or perhaps around the fireplace this Christmas, we need to think and pray for those that are much less fortunate than ourselves here in America. Christians in other nations, especially the Middle East, the birthplace of Christianity, are much less fortunate than we, with many facing a grave prospect for the future. Last Sunday, ISIS jihadists bombed a church on Sunday in Pakistan, slaughtering Christians as they worship the Christmas season. Christians are being eviscerated in Iraq and Syria.
Greetings, folks. This is...
Christian children have been cut in half, missionaries crucified, women sexually enslaved. ISIS has used chemical weapons. It's the ultimate nightmare scenario. You know, this week in the UN, they were in a fit of righteousness and condemning the USA for moving its embassy to the true capital of Israel. As you ponder that, please think about the one desperate little girl from the Middle East that pleaded to the UN. We cried to the UN. We cried to the UN, but nobody came to help us. They were busy, young lady, condemning the United States. Today, that village is surrounded by mass graves. There are fine organizations like the ACLJ, which are desperately doing what they can, expanding their advocacy efforts for Christians facing genocide. Sorry about that. They've then filed a massive federal lawsuit against the deep state's betrayal of dying Christians. You don't hear a lot about that on the news, do you? Yet, if we as fellow Christians sit by as Christians die, then what should that baby in swaddling clothes do with us? Would Jesus get out the whip? Like he did at the changing tables? Sorry about that. I do have a terrible cold today. But others like them, and I'm talking about supporting the ACLJ and others like them, the heat needs to be applied to the halls of Congress as well as to the pulpit of America's Christian church. For evil to flourish, good men need only do nothing, and to do nothing, and to know to do good and not to do it. Well, that's a sin. To whom much is given, my friends, much is expected. We kind of take for granted today what we have in America, and we should be grateful for what we do have. But we do have a Heavenly Father that's looking down on us. And I don't think he's very happy with what he sees. He's given us everything. We've got a roof over our head. We eat on a regular basis, some of us more than others. Yet, when times of crisis come up, we just kind of look the other way. Why is that? Aren't we to know to do good? Do we not care about our brothers and sisters in the Middle East? Do we not care about them here in America? We talked about the court systems today. It seems that America really has no appetite for justice, no appetite for righteousness. But we do have an appetite. We're going to watch our football games, and we're going to eat our turkeys and our hams, and then sit back and take a nap. while others overseas aren't nearly as privileged as we are. And they're not worried about what they're going to have for dessert. They're worried about whether they're going to be able to live through dessert. We need to wake up, America. And Christmas is a good time to do that. There's still time. Still a lot of time left for us, and there's still time left for those in the Middle East. A good friend of ours, Mason Weaver, put a video on YouTube this week with regards to Christmas. And because my voice isn't holding out, Mason's going to pretty much say what I'd like to say about Christmas. And we want to wish all our last call listeners a Merry Christmas. Here's Mason.
This is the final, maybe the final video of this year. This is the season that we've got families, we got travel, we got folks busy, you got airports closing down, Atlanta. You have a lot of things going on in the news, what after our president. But I want to take a little moment this day to sit down and talk to you about the real meaning of everything that exists. We win this thing, folks. The fact that we are celebrating Christmas, the fact that he was born, the fact that God kept his promise to us, the fact that he walked among us, the fact that he spoke to us directly, the fact that he came out the grave, the fact that he is going to come back, means that everything around you, every stressful situation that you are considering means nothing. It means that we have already won. When after our president, when they call you names, when you see evil ignoring the truth and coming at you, remember we have won. I remember riding up the freeway when I had my personal conflict with God, trying to determine as a young man, was I going to take on the belief of my father and grandfather? Was I going to actually accept that Christ was my Savior? I'm having a conflict with myself. I'm studying, I'm analyzing, I'm reflecting, I'm driving up the freeway in the middle of the night, 3 o'clock in the morning, thinking about those disciples. What is it that they saw that made them change? These cowardly, self-centered, egotistical guys saw something. And when I finally realized, when I finally accept the fact that a grown man came out the grave alive, when I accepted the fact that the creator of the universe came to earth for me, God Almighty, who made everything, came to earth born of woman just for me. That he came here thinking about me by name, that he allowed sinful men to manhandle him for me, to spit on him for me. That he allowed his holy body to be broken and beaten just for me. Think about me by name. When I had to accept the fact that the creator of the universe allowed his holy blood to soak that cross and soak that ground just for me, and that he went into that grave for me and will come out for me, and he went to heaven for me to prepare a place for me. When I recognize that he will come back and call me by name out of my grave, I realized that he did not compromise with me on that cross. So I could not compromise with him on earth. And that's when my life changed. That's when I decided that I was going to do his will. I was going to study his rules. I was going to live by his statements. And I was going to ignore the noise around me. And I invite you all who have not yet done that to accept that birth and that death and that resurrection to cover you from the sins that you see around you right now. His birth was a testimony from God to all of us. God keeps his promises. In the garden, Adam and Eve had no problems. They had no death. They had no illness. They had no sickness. They had no discomfort. And God put man in the garden to keep it and to secure it. And man failed. Eve did not fail. Man failed. You men failing to keep the authority God gave you. You men failing to take on the mantle God put on you. You men, you're the problem. Because the world was not cursed because Eve took the fruit. The world was cursed because man took the fruit. And God, loving us so much, had only one choice to redeem us back to him. Keeping his promise. He said, I will redeem you back. And 300 prophecies in the Old Testament pointing to this day we're celebrating, Christmas. 300 prophecies. God said to the world, God said to mankind, you are not man enough to keep me from not keeping my word. Here is 300 prophecies of the birth of Christ, where he's going to be born, how he's going to die, everything he's going to do. 300 words, make me a liar, make me not keep my promise. Here they are right here, folks, 300. And we celebrate that event this season. I don't care what day he's really born. I don't care what season he was really born. I don't care if it was wintertime, summertime. I don't care. I don't care if there was 3 wise men. Probably wasn't. I don't care. It just said 3 gifts. How many, you think 3 kings going to be traveling by themselves throughout the roads of Judea by themselves? You think there's 3? I don't care if they came here as a youth or a baby. I don't care. The fact that Mary gave birth to him is enough for me. So this season, all you unchristian, all you non-Christians, find a real Christian to talk to. Get the answers to why otherwise sane men believe that a dead man came out the grave. Celebrate it. Talk to your neighbors about it. Witness it. This is not the season to be jolly. This is not Jingle Bell Rock. This is not about a gift giving. It's about a gift given. This is the time for Christians to celebrate, to announce, acknowledge that we celebrate a risen, living King, and one day we will be part of the body of Christ. That's the reason for the season. That's the happy holidays, and that's what we're celebrating. Don't let anyone, can you imagine? I mean, my God, can you imagine anybody else shaming you into denying who Christ was? Shaming you. We see the nations are fighting. We see people coming to our country trying to kill themselves to kill us. We see the news lying on us every day. We see worldwide Christians are being attacked and ridiculed. Folks, what we see today is hope. What we see today is truth. God predicted this. Jesus told us this was the last days. He told us the signs of the time. We see Jerusalem back where the world said it would never exist again. We can go to Jerusalem today. We can go to Israel today. They said it would never exist again. God said it would. Who won that one? We can get on a plane now and go to Armageddon. We can go and look at the place. We can see it, where it's going to be at. We know he has risen. So this season, rejoice. Join me and the other Mason family as we rejoice the birth of our King. It does not matter what day it was. It does not matter what year it was. It doesn't matter what they got wrong. And all those aspects, what matters that God got it right. He rose up. You are saved. You've been redeemed. You've been saved from your sins. You're no longer under the old schoolmaster. You are now righteous. So people ask me, how are you, Mason? I am right. When people call me arrogant, understand, folks. You Christians out there, understand you're on the narrow path. So therefore you should have a narrow mind. You've been called separate. That is, your Christian belief is a narrow-minded, closed-minded point of view. You believe only through Jesus can mankind get to heaven. You believe that every knee shall bow to him. You believe that a grown man died dead as a doornail and came out the grave alive. You believe that either you're crazy or you're saved, but you can't be nonchalant about it. The world's going to hate you because you're saved by your belief. By your belief. You're saying they're wrong. By your belief, you're saying there's no compromise with their beliefs. You're saying that you are right and they are wrong. They're going to hate you. My goodness, they hated Jesus. What do you think they're going to do with you? Accept it as a badge of honor. Suffer for righteousness. Stand up and proclaim the truth of this season. This celebration is that we have been redeemed. God Almighty, the creator of this universe, thought enough about you to lay flesh and blood on his existence. And was born of a woman and breathed this air and ate this food and got tired and sat here and said, I am coming here to pay the cost that you cannot pay. I'm going to pay the debt that you cannot pay. I'm going to redeem you from the burden of your debt. I'm going to take that off your hands personally because I love you so much. That is a gift that you can't even imagine. He's going to come back to get his. Who he saved belongs to him. He's going to come back, folks, and get his. So we, the people, have to express that. Our job is to tell them. Our job is to tell them, not to convince them. I'm not going to argue with the ungodly. I'm not going to debate with atheists. I'm not going to debate with folks of other religious beliefs. My job is to tell you and go on to heaven. My job is to tell the truth and go home. And so this Christmas season, let's contemplate in our heart what this gift is. We have the power to rule this world because we've been redeemed for it. Someone asks me all the time, what about the separation of church and state? You are not man enough to separate God from anything. You cannot separate nothing from God. And give unto Caesar what Caesar's and all that garbage, folks. Caesar is dead. He's a pile of dust. Jesus has risen. It belongs to us. So hug your kids, sing your praises, share your gifts, enjoy your company. But remember, the reason for this season is that God Almighty loved you enough. He loved you enough to give his son for your sake. Stay right or be left. Eternity is a long time to be wrong. God bless you.
Mason shouldn't beat around the bush. You know what I mean? As he would say, live and in Colorado. Actually, it wasn't live. We really appreciate Mason. And as I'm listening to that, but first of all, stop. It doesn't make any difference at this point whether the 25th of December is the actual birth date of Jesus Christ. Pharisees, Sadducees. It's the date that you have an opportunity to celebrate what Christ did for you, what his birth did for you. And you should take advantage of that. And until you know the exact date, celebrate this date as not only your birth date, but Christ's birth date.
It's my rebirth date.
Yep. What does it mean to you? What does Christmas mean to you? Do me a favor, Christians. Take 5 minutes and write down what Christian means to you. 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking. And write down what Christian means to you. Well, I'm sort of lying because I want you to do something with that. I want you to share that with your family. When you gather around the tree, you gather around dinner. Share to them what Christmas really means to you. Don't obfuscate. Don't hide the fact that you're a Christian. Don't be embarrassed by it, because that's what Pravda, that's what the educational institutions, that's what the business community and the government want you to do. They want you to cower down. And I thank God that at least we have a president that stands up and is going to say Merry Christmas and is going to celebrate the season along with us. I want to thank all of our listeners because you've been a gift to us this year. And thank everybody that helped us. We've got Robert in the studio this morning. He's our technician, and we had him on YouTube a little bit. He was listening intently to what I was saying and, of course, what Mason was saying. I want to thank Mr. Anderson, and Robert. You've both been a gift to me. Incredible gift. As I'm losing my voice.
And you to us, brother.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And again, I wish you all a Merry Christmas, and remember what the reason for the season is. This is B.J. Edwards along with Mr. Anderson. This has been your last call. We got a great New Year's Eve show for you. You don't want to miss that one.
It was your last call of 2017.
Not yet. Again, thanks for listening.
Join us next week on WTVOradio.com for Last Call. with BJ Edwards.